Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're jumping back into Maestro World War M, and we're taking a look at the aftermath of Maestro's attack on Pacifica. But with doing this, we also take a look at this conflict that is just growing, and we're given the question of who actually is the villain here. And in the broad scope, does that even matter? So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so when we jump back in, we pick up from right after Maestro's wrath had collided with Pacifica. And before it went further, we saw Doom snatch up Namor, the Abomination, and the Human Torch, bringing the three of them to his home in Latveria. And it's at this time where we jump over to the outskirts of Dystopia, where Minister is checking on the farmers, which is something that Maestro would usually do once a month, but since Maestro's away, Minister's taking care of that for him. But while Minister's out here explaining to the soldier the reason why farmers are even out here in the wasteland, and really the reason for that is the farmers, they're trying to restore the land. But while Minister's having this conversation with the soldier, in mid-conversation, that soldier catches a headshot, and we quickly find out that this was done by Decord, who had come along out here with Janice with the instruction of bringing Minister back to Rick Jones, who at this point for Rick, he's definitely at a new location now. And with Janice and Decord bringing Minister here to speak to Rick, they made sure to blindfold him so that he wouldn't know where exactly this new location is. Because I'm sure you guys remember in Maestro issue 5, just before War and Pax, when we had seen Maestro come after Rick, but when Maestro went to the previous location, Rick made the smart choice and he got up out of there, which at the time gave Rick the opportunity to safely give Maestro the son becomes the father speech. But at this point, with Minister being brought to Rick, he mentions that he knows of Rick because of Maestro mentioning him in conversation, but then when Rick just stares at him for a moment and he calls him Turo, telling him geez, you got node, can you still flame? And with Rick saying this, it catches Minister off guard, and he tells Rick no, that he hasn't flamed for ages. But with hearing Rick call him Turo, this is a callback to many years ago to when he was a sidekick of Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch. And really in this moment with Rick saying this isn't the first time that this has been referenced, because in the previous issue when we saw Minister talking to Namor, we saw that Namor at this current time still calls Minister Turo. And I remember a few of you guys in the comments at the time picked that up, and you were hoping that they would do an Invaders reference, or at least confirm in this story some of Minister's history. So it's nice to see Peter David do a bit more of that here. But with Rick having Janice and Decord bring Minister here, Rick asks him why do you work for Maestro? And Minister's more or less hey, I don't really work for him because he worked for Maestro's predecessor, but when Maestro stepped in and took over, Minister had just stuck around doing the same job in hopes that someone else would come along and kill Maestro. And when he says this, both Janice and Decord are okay, well, how do you kill him? What's his weakness? And right there, Minister is just well, Maestro doesn't seem to have any. And the way that Minister breaks this down, he hits the nail on the head, because he tells them Maestro's strength is limitless, and in anywhere that he falls short, he's able to outthink his opponent. And even though that may be a simple statement, that in itself has made Maestro's track record up to this point flawless, because if he always has a plan for every situation that he can't just punch through, then how do you stop this guy if you can't outsmart him or overthrow his tyranny? Because until someone finds a solution for at least one of those, then the world is just going to run the way that Maestro wants it to run. But then it's here where we jump over to Latveria, where Namor has found Doom's wine cellar, and he's pretty much planted himself there in front of a picture of Doom's mother, and he's just throwing back one glass after the other. And understandably so, this guy's grieving. And I'm not saying I'd advise that to anyone, just saying, with this situation, I get it. But then it's here where Jim and the Abomination find Namor here in the wine cellar. And you can tell for Jim, he's looking at Namor kind of well, what's this guy doing? But the Abomination, he gets it, because Namor just lost his wife and his son, who had both died horribly, and he tells Jim that he's been through worse and he's even done worse. And with him saying this, Jim kind of looks at him and he questions him well, are you a supervillain? And the Abomination lets him know that that's just a title, because for every person who's been given a title, as bad as it may be, or even if it's thought to be good, there's always someone who sees that person as something else. And when the Abomination says this, it makes me think of a couple examples, or a few actually, but the first two that come to mind are Punisher or Deadpool. Because for these guys, depending on who you're talking to, most people, they would consider Punisher or Deadpool to be heroes or either anti-heroes, because 9 times out of 10 they're objectively aiming for the greater good. But even with that being the case, these guys are killers, and to some people that's all that they are. and they would see these two as nothing different. And this doesn't just apply to people like Punisher or Deadpool or Wolverine, but the same principle even goes to people like Captain America, because for anyone from the US and a number of other countries, they would consider Captain America to be a hero. But if you go back to the 1940s and you ask Hitler who he thought Captain America was, then he would probably describe Captain America as a terrorist. So when the Abomination says this to Jim, he lets him know that titles are meaningless, because everybody's fighting for good in their own eyes. And when he says that, I couldn't help but think like, well, if you're the only eyes who see yourself as good, then you're probably wrong, and you need to get your vision checked. But I like that the Abomination brings this up here, because with him, Doom, and especially Namor, it brings back the question of who are they now? Because it's here where Doom makes his way into the conversation, and he talks about his past and how Reed Richards destroyed his face and sent Doom on this path to so-called villainy, while Reed was always considered the hero. And to Doom, in his eyes, his deeds, the things that he's done, they were just reasonable reactions to him wanting to get his revenge on Reed Richards. But now at this time, with Reed Richards dead, Jim then asks Doom like, okay, well what now? Now that Reed's gone, what do you have to live for? And Doom just tells him vengeance. Vengeance on the Maestro. And with him saying that, it just goes to show us once again that there were a number of people throughout World War M who are making themselves out to be the hero in their own eyes. But just after us seeing this conversation over in Latveria, it's here where we then jump over to Maestro, who's making his way back to dystopia. And in his case, we already know like he's made his mind up, because we saw that thought process a while back when Maestro found out what happened to the world, and he made his decision like, okay, we'll see that humanity destroyed itself, so really the only way to sustain this world is to have the Maestro take over it. But with Maestro leaving Pacifica, he's not even thinking about this, but rather with him seeing Namor, the Abomination, and the Human Torch being teleported away with the same type of transporter beam that Doom had used to get away, and like we'd seen, he's figured out that these guys were taken by Doom. And with him knowing this and thinking this through, he first thinks like, well, okay, I could probably go after them, but he holds off on that idea because he doesn't know exactly where they are. But what he does know for certain is that eventually they will come for him. And with that reasoning, he just thinks to himself that he'll just take care of them when they come, the same way that he did with Hercules, AIM, and the Pantheon. Because if they did just come after him now, they wouldn't stand a chance. But even still, Maestro comes to the solution of eventually heading to Alchemax in order to find a way to track these guys down, thinking that if he can find their location, then they'll never see him coming. But of course, we know Doom better than that, because he's definitely keeping an eye on Maestro. But with Doom watching Maestro, who again is heading towards dystopia, Jim makes the suggestion to Doom like, can't you just hit Maestro with an orbital laser and just be done with it? But Doom more or less just turns around and tells Jim like, Hulks don't work like that. And Doom tells him if he had an orbital laser, it'll probably just bounce off the guy. And he tells Jim, Blonsky will tell you that. Because even for Blonsky, someone who is not as strong as Maestro, bunker busting missiles to him were just an alarm clock. But this then has Doom like, well, by the way, where is Blonsky? Which from here takes us back to the wine cellar, where the Abomination and Namor, as it appears, they have moved on from the wine to the beer and vodka. But while they're down here, they have an interesting conversation, which once again is sparked by the Abomination. Because initially he talks about the possibility of Namor's wife and his son coming back, because the Abomination, he killed the Hulk's wife and she came back. And with hearing this, Namor just looks at the Abomination like, man, you killed the Hulk's wife, dude, you're evil. But then the Abomination, he kind of hits Namor with the, yeah, but what is evil though? Because this isn't the first time he's been told that. But this makes Namor think of a time when he used to be evil and he threatened to sink Manhattan, he's fought against the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and even to take it a step further to what the Abomination was saying before, there was a time where, depending on if you lived in Atlantis or Wakanda, where you would have made your determination on whether Namor or the Black Panther was the hero. Because for either kingdom, they just saw their king fighting for their people. And really it's here with the Abomination to ask Namor if he truly thinks that he was a villain at that time, and Namor tells him that he was fighting on the behalf of his people against the rest of the world who didn't care about the oceans. And when Namor says that, Blonsky's more or less like, oh, to villainy. And it's like here you can tell that in addition to Maestro and Doom, now we have the Abomination and Namor who have convinced themselves that whatever it is they're getting ready to do is good in their own eyes. But at this point, we then jump back to Maestro, who's made his way back to dystopia. And when he gets there, Minister's already back. But when Minister greets him, it then leads into like this awkward conversation. Because when Maestro tells Minister that he wants his food, bath, and a woman, because you know Maestro, he likes to get clean and dirty at the same time. But when he tells this to Minister, Maestro also lets him know that after that, he'll be going to Alchemax. So then Minister, he's like, what's that Alchemax? And Maestro tells him he wants to see if there's something there that can help him find Doom. So then Minister's like, something like what? And right then Maestro just stops and looks at him. Like, dude, you are asking a lot of questions today. And at this time, we know that the Minister, he's been in contact with Namor up until the point where Maestro had made his way to Pacifica. But in this moment here, he just makes it sound as if he's concerned for his own safety, with him knowing that Doom is a threat, and he just tries to make it sound like he's concerned about the next step of Maestro's plan. But with them saying this, Maestro just kind of goes on about handling his business and making his way to Alchemax. But with leaving, Maestro tells Minister that he has a lot of enemies, and sometimes it's hard to know who your friends are. And from here, going back over to Latveria, to where at this time the Abomination, he's just drinking by himself, but also thinking about how his hatred for the Hulk and fighting the Hulk for so many years, how that has costed him so much. And he remembers telling Namor before he left that he'd even come to the point to where he forgot why he wanted vengeance on the Hulk. Because at one point he blamed the Hulk for his own transformation into the Abomination, which was mainly because a job for the KGB had went wrong. But even still, the Abomination feels like he's holding on to this vengeance because it's all that he has. But then it's here where we go over to Namor, who's already left at this point, to where we see him heading to his #1 largest guard, who he had made reference to in the previous issue, because much like Doom and the Abomination, vengeance is the only thing on his mind, and for Namor, he's looking to get that done by any means necessary. But for the Abomination, when he's woken up by Jim, because again, the Abomination, he's been by himself for some time at this point, with Namor gone and him just sitting here drinking and thinking. But with Jim coming down to the wine cellar and asking the Abomination where's Namor, and the Abomination just like he doesn't know. And it kind of ticks him off because Jim's like, what kind of answer is that? But the Abomination like, dude, I don't know, that's the answer. But from here, Emil, he leaves Jim and he goes over to Winston, Doom's assistant, to ask him to do something for him. Which from here then takes us over to Alchemax with Maestro, who's made his way here to figure out how he's gonna find Doom. Because it's not like Doom's just gonna appear out of thin air, the same way that he disappeared. But as it turns out, the Abomination does. But when the Abomination shows up here, the way that this plays out, it's a bit confusing to Maestro. Because for one, yeah, he knew these guys were gonna come looking for him, he knew eventually they were gonna bring the fight to him, but with it just being the Abomination, and Maestro of course just being able to just beat the mess out of him. But this throws Maestro for a loop, because not after long he realizes that the Abomination is not fighting back. And when this happens, Maestro's not sure if this is a trick or if Blonsky thinks that Maestro's just gonna go easy on him. But at this point, the Abomination, he just tells Maestro that he doesn't see the point anymore because the world is destroyed and he doesn't believe that there's anything left to fight for. But before this can go any further, the ground then starts to shake and a voice just calls Maestro. And when he turns around, it's Namor standing on top of his #1 guard, telling Maestro that he destroyed what Namor loved, so now Namor is going to return the favor. But with Namor showing up here with his #1 guard, he yells Imperious Rex, which we've seen him say a lot, and in most cases people are like, what does that mean? But now it's very intriguing to actually see this creature, because at one point Namor told Thor that Imperious Rex had just meant that he was going to feed Thor to the largest sharks that he can find. So likely it really just means that this creature is the largest sea monster that Namor could find, and at another point Imperious Rex could be referring to a monster or a creature who he later finds bigger than this one. But Namor will have to live through this in order for us to see how that plays out. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.